One of my favorite quotes by Frederick Douglass is, "Once you learn to read, you will be forever free." Our next guest has made it his life's mission to embody this quote as he advocates for all children to learn to read and write. Kareem is a co-founder and executive director of FULCRUM and is also the Oakland NAACP's second vice president and chair of its education committee. Kareem's advocacy is featured in the film The Right to Read. Kareem is a proud Morehouse man, and he has a master's in clinical community psychology from the University of South Carolina. Kareem is a bold social justice advocate who continues to fan the flame for children's civil rights to learn to read and write. Kareem, I am just so honored to have a conversation with you. You are one of my true literacy heroes. Welcome to the show.
Well, I appreciate that, Doctor. I'm trying my best to sound the alarm, and I really appreciate that quote from Frederick Douglass because it really makes it plain. And this is something that in the quest for freedom is often overlooked, but it is the core element of freedom to navigate today's society. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, as we think about what's been happening, right, this literacy movement, we know that there are schools that have shifted to the science of reading practices, many of those things that you've been talking about. So, some progress we know has been made, but I'm really curious to know what you think leaders could do better.
So first, let me push on the premise a little bit. The premise is that we're all on this journey. Districts are making the switch. Schools are doing the work. I'm gonna push on that a little bit, and then I can talk about the second part of it.
Sure.
I think that the intentions are there, but oftentimes we're lacking the nuts and bolts of what it takes to move a system and to move a school, to move a district, to move a state. The American Federation of Teachers put out it's been almost 30 years since they put
Yeah.
out their elements of an effective reading program and talked about evidence-based practices and the science behind how we learn to read. And they listed five critical elements. And I've gone around the country, and I'm telling you, people tell me, yes, we've started this, we're doing the science of reading thing. But when you ask them about the specific elements, two, one and a half, at
Mm.
most two and a half of those things are done. Strong core reading curriculum that's aligned to the research consensus and that's usable within the bounds of their structures in the teacher contract. Instructional materials aligned with the research. That's the second one. Appropriate reading assessments. Timely intervention
Mm.
for struggling kids. That means we're not going to do a wait to fail model. We're going to have it timely and then high quality professional development. Those are just the basics. That's five basics. So when people say we've made a shift, I'm like, have you really? Have
Mm.
we? How many of those five things have been done and operationalized and funded and are being led adroitly by people who have themselves studied to be prepared for the commission? So I would just say that. But now, the question that you asked me, that was in
I
the
love that
question
though.
I'm just saying, we often because we all mean well.
Right.
We all mean well. We all want the kids to learn, and we all want to use evidence-based practice. But how does that show up in buildings? If we say we want to ensure that all kids have a high quality education, fake, free and appropriate public education, but then we have materials that they're not aligned to those essential components, or they're not implemented consistently, systematically, explicitly, and directly, or if we have assessments that aren't timely and that aren't usable, that they don't give us the information that we need. If we're waiting until, third and
Mm.
fourth grade to that. So our audio has to match our video.
Mm.
Our intentions, our mission statements, our strategic plans have to match what we're doing in buildings,
Yeah.
from the state house to the schoolhouse. And if that happens, then we're in good shape. But so often it's just not the case.
I love that you really talk about the fact that we're not waiting for an autopsy, right? We need to
Yeah,
make sure
exactly.
that we're giving regular checkups and
That's
feedback.
right. That's
Awesome.
right.
So, well,
That's right.
so now, okay, what do leaders do from a day-to-day basis if they're in
Okay.
these schools where they have these good intentions, right? We know that they have one and a half to two of those things on the list. How do they get to all five things on the list? What do they need to be doing on a day-to-day regular basis?
There's a few things. So, and we're talking about school leaders as opposed to system leaders, correct? Okay, so school
Well,
leaders,
well,
there's a few.
well I think we should talk about both, right?
Well, I would say in both cases, but especially in the building, you have to be the head learner.
Hmm.
In fact, in places in Europe, like in England and elsewhere, the name principal, they actually call the principal the head teacher. You have to be the head teacher.
Right.
And this is a season where people need to see you doing it. They need to see you researching and investigating and learning, and not just from your position being an expert, but by your service and by your commitment to figuring this out. That's the first thing. Let people see you learn.
Hmm.
And if you say, well, I already know it all, well, then that's a whole nother thing. If you know it all, but the results aren't there, that's a whole different conversation. But assuming that we're all on a learning journey in some stage, make your learning visible to people and be humble enough to narrate it along the way, and invite people to learn alongside you. Sometimes we're protective of our status and our position, and we don't want to appear that we don't know things.
Hmm.
It's actually the opposite. Great leadership in this season, um, kind of it goes against that common sense, those intuitions. It's about letting your guard down and say, hey, you know what? I'm figuring this out too. But man, I'm committed to learning, and I invite you to learn alongside me. Some other things is you need an instructional leadership team. If you don't have one, identify those folks in the building who are willing and able to. Usually districts have some sort of a process whereby they're compensated, a little bit more, extended contract, and then you commission them and you give them, the call to create an academic norm
Hmm.
list. What are the things that we agree on as a body that we're going to do? What are some things that we as a school can commit to? What are our instructional norms? And I'm not talking about things, we're all going to have our objectives on the board. I'm not talking about that type of stuff. The process. I'm talking about we're all going to do um, we're all going to enrich and infuse our core content areas with language objectives. Meaning, yes, during social studies class, we have language objectives. I'm a high school principal. That means my biology department, in addition to the biology lesson, the content, and the science standards, we're also going to have language objectives because oral language development is a key part of this, and all teachers have to take part in it, not just the reading teachers and not just elementary school. So I'm doing those things. I'm looking for professional development that people can access at a variety of depths. It's not enough to just get access to letters training or to get access to Orton Gillingham or to get access to, you have to have a variety of options so that people can engage wherever they are. They should be aligned options. You can't
Right.
have one person going left, another person going right, but you can have some person on the freeway, another person on the street. You know what I mean? They're all going the same direction, but
Right.
it just depends on the bandwidth they have and the energy they have to engage. You also have to get people to see success. We're taking a group of people to one of the most one of the biggest turnaround stories in the country, and that's Seaford, Delaware. I recommend for everyone to look them up and see what they did and what they used and how they did it. It was not easy, and they made mistakes, but to go from one of the lowest districts in the state, and with all the poverty and the second language learners and they didn't know what to do with the African American kids and all the special needs kids. It was just, matter of fact, the state, like I said, the state almost took them over, and to now be one of the highest performing districts in the state, there's something there to learn from. The Extraordinary Districts podcast by Ed Trust chronicled the details of what they did, and they spoke to the superintendent and chief academic officer, et cetera. We'll get a chance to do that too in person. But you got to get people out of the building and let them see examples of success. And that's central office, that's at the site level, that's folks in the state house. Because sometimes when we're in our bubbles, we just get comfortable. We
Right.
know what we know, and we might make small incremental progress and be like, that's good enough, or that's great. Okay, but let me take you down to Mississippi. Go to Jackson. Go visit these different places that are doing things and are moving the needle for kids. And it challenges the mind and it encourages collective teacher efficacy, which research shows is the number one ingredient
Yep.
for effect on student improvement, collective teacher efficacy. It's not just the rah stuff, but it is us believing that we make the difference and we are the
Yes.
variable. We are the variable, the educators, we are the ones, we have some say so about this. This isn't just a fait accompli. This is something that we actually have agency over. It doesn't mean that we control every aspect of children's lives, nor does
Right.
it diminish the other challenges that they come in with, but we are the number one factor in the learning outcomes when students come through our doors, and we have some agency over that. So that anyway, those are some things that I would do: professional development, and that includes getting outside of the building, making sure that you have an instructional leadership team and you have some instructional norms. Make sure your curriculum is right. Make sure that you're the chief learner, and that you make it visible. And that might even mean some people might have to fall on the sword a little bit. It's okay to say we blew it. We made a mistake. We asked you to do something 3 years ago, but we've been studying, and it's not due to a lack of diligence on your part. Research has shown that program had limits, or that effort had limits, and that we now want to move past that to serve our children well. And we invite you on this. So there's a way that you can do it that doesn't smack of high-handedness.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and but those are some things that leaders can do today. And one more thing on this.
Sure.
Somebody has to own literacy. Someone, and that person can be, I call it 1 2 3. It's either got to be the person in charge, their number one designee, or that person's person. 3 levels down is them. Anything more than that, watch out. Anything more than that, and you know who's telling who what, and all the bureaucratic politics, and that it just gets messy. You don't want
Yeah.
that. You want a clear line to the superintendent or to the principal, someone who's responsive, knowledgeable, and in charge with a budget so that they can get things handled.
Wow. That's those are all really powerful things that they can do right away, which I love, and I appreciate you giving a nod to John Hattie's work. We need to
Mhm.
all be more familiar with it.
Yeah. I've,
Yeah.
I've I've met with board members. I'll never forget one board member I met in Oakland, and I passed out color copies of the visible learning categories, or the
Yeah.
elements, and the effect size of the different things and how they impacted learning. And I said, this is a list based on over 300 million students of
Yep.
this research, and what had an impact on learning. And she sat there and she looked at this list and the color coded, and she started to tear up. And she said, "You mean all the things that we argue about, that we fuss and carry on about, the yelling at the board meetings and doing it? You mean all that? Those are things that don't even make that big a difference on learning?
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me." And I could just see her wheels turning. But you know what? That's how many teachers feel. You mean all the time, effort, and energy I put into this, all the sleepless nights, all the lesson planning, I was using materials that were never designed to reach all kids. I was using methodologies that only worked for a subset of kids. It is sobering, and for some people, it can become overwhelming. And that's why I talk about the need for you know um, mindfulness, and well, not mindfulness, but caring for the individual, and making
Right.
sure that we're well grounded, because it can be overwhelming, the weight of the responsibility and the awareness, and it may be tough, it may be sobering even, but we have to be courageous enough and vulnerable enough to do that.
Mm. You talked about the this caring piece, right? And you said something that I think is pretty brilliant and may even need to be on some t-shirts or on some mugs. You said that love
Excellent.
is a lesson plan.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
And
indeed. Yes,
I
indeed.
really want you to speak to what you exactly mean
Listen.
when it comes to teaching reading, whether it's again building school leaders, district school leaders, teachers. What do you mean? What is the
I,
insight when
I
you think about love as a lesson plan?
thank you for asking me that question. I appreciate it. Very few. I don't know if anyone else ever asked me that before. Love is a lesson plan. So I understand that when we talk about love in schools, oftentimes people think of it as being just connecting with the kids. That's no small thing, but supporting them, encouraging them, affirming them, culturally relevant pedagogy, and all that stuff is wonderful. We need that,
Right.
but there is something even higher than that, and that is, if I see you and plan for you, I'm going to intentionally include you in the design. And as a teacher, whether it is an open-ended construction of a lesson, or I'm taking a curriculum script that they give me and I'm breathing you into it. Not just figuratively or not just metaphorically and not just culturally. I'm talking about what are your needs as a learner. I'm putting that in the center of my planning. That takes time, that takes intentionality, and that takes knowledge of the science of reading and the science of learning. That is a plan. That's not, you don't just wing that, especially not every day. You cannot do that. You cannot sustain that level of attention. So if you're serious about going after all children in your school, your classroom, your district, or your state, you have to make sure that the day-to-day lessons are being planned for, to include the children who are the furthest away from opportunity.
Yeah.
That by design. So I know it's not I know that it's not nouveau, real chic, old-fashioned lesson planning, and to be honest, I hate planning sometimes. But if I love you, if I love you, we got to show proof. Now, at the district level, that means that you're not bogging me down with paperwork and things that have no evidence of success. That I have the bandwidth to plan for these children. That you're not putting me in a corner, operationally speaking, because I'm so busy with all the rest of the stuff that I don't have time. That I'm so fatigued that I cannot plan for that child.
Right.
That is a duty of leadership. What can you take off the table? What does your preparation time look like? That's not a game. Preparation time, I talk about this all the time. People think preparation time is like some sort of union talking point. Look, I get frustrated with that. I'm pro kid. And if you're pro kid, you want the adults to have the materials and the time needed to reach the kids.
That's right.
That means I have to make sure my stuff is aligned with science reading, and I choose something that my teachers can plan with. It just, love is a lesson plan, and I love all these wonderful mission statements. I know the websites. I understand diversity, equity, and inclusion. I understand that it's Black History Month. There are going to be people who roll out books on Dr. King and other. I understand all of that. Plan for the child.
Right.
Let them know that they matter in the details of instruction, because that's where social justice lies, the details of our day-to-day instruction. So that's what I meant by love as a lesson plan. And that's why I love teachers so much, because what they're doing on a day-to-day basis is the tip of the spear. Without planning, you don't reach kids.
Right.
Without planning, you have to have a roadmap. If I'm trying to get to Chicago and I start walking and I don't have a plan, it's going to be a problem. I might end in Los Angeles. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
You got to have a plan for where you're going. Our children are too far away from where they need to be for us to count on happenstance and hope to get them there. Hope is not a strategy. We all should have hope, but it's the planning, it's the design, it's the intentionality that actually gets us where we're in a position to serve all kids where they need to be served.
Thanks for listening to Literacy Matters Empowered Conversations. To hear the rest of my conversation with Kareem Weaver, head over to Apple or Spotify.